don't know how much this is fan driven. It just from the sheer pressure, because that seems like it too. But people are making it sound like this was a championship or bust season for the Knicks, which nobody would have ever said even 2 weeks ago. Like we're just changing. As the podcast name,
we're moving the goalposts.
Completely. Like, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morgeson. This is another edition of Moving the Goalposts. You can follow us across social media at MTGPETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network at ETB across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Nick at NMorgeson Radio. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on ETBpodcast.com. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. And Moving the Goalposts this show is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more. All right. So, big news, perfect timing. Usually when news like this drops, it's right after we did the podcast. Like the day after. And then the whole thing is just moot. So I guess we had a little bit of luck. So the Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau, which I was shocked because I woke up to find out this news and I thought the whole thing was fake. That's how surprised I was. I don't know if this is a Dolan thing or a Leon Rose thing. From my understanding, it sounds like it was a Dolan decision, but I'm not 100% certain.
So I have the report also because I happen to be just getting ready for work at the school district I'm in, and I see the sham tweet drop, and it says New York Knicks are relieving Tom Thibodeau of his duties as head coach, and then of course because they have to give all the stats to prove that he was a really good coach. Thibodeau led the Knicks to their first Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years, by the way. Made playoffs in 4 or 5 years and led the Knicks to 50 consecutive 50-plus win seasons for the first time since the 90s. This is wild. This is wild. Like, you and I were having this discussion already, that it made no sense to fire Thibodeau, considering every year he's gone up in the progression ladder throughout the playoffs. And I'm not saying they would have made the finals because that would have been tough next year. But and then he Shams quote tweeted his own tweet and said the Knicks are singularly focused, this is interesting, on the pursuit of a championship and believe a new voice will serve as the focus for the organization's next step. Sources said after 5 seasons with the Knicks, Thibodeau is out as the head coach.
Okay. I have a lot of issues with all of that. First of all, what makes you think that unless you're going out and getting Phil Jackson or Greg Popovich or something like that, and neither of them are capable of coaching anymore, unless you're going out to get one of those Hall of Fame head coaches, who are you going to hire that you think is actually going to bring you a championship? That line of thinking should be why they should pursue getting Giannis. To me, that would be what makes sense. First of all, everybody is looking to make it to a championship. The problem I'm having with all of this blame game going on with the Knicks right now, everybody's, and I'm not saying nobody deserves blame. There is some blame to go around, whether you're talking about Towns not having a good series or you're talking about Thibodeau or whoever. You also have to zoom out. And also, people have to stop making it sound like the Knicks lost in the play-in tournament when they were supposed to make the NBA finals. The Knicks did not underachieve. The Knicks overachieved in the playoffs this year. They're making it sound like the Knicks didn't just overachieve. And objectively, they overachieved. They beat Boston, who nobody gave. The Boston was minus 900 to win that.
No,
series.
that was the exact number. Minus 900.
Minus 900, and the Knicks beat them. And then nobody expected them to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I would have understood it a bit more, maybe if they had lost to the Celtics and they were just horrible against all the top teams, as we kept hearing about. But the Knicks overachieved this season. Objectively, they overachieved. So to me, it's not only have they overachieved this year, they've progressively been getting, it's also the best season they've had in 25 years. And they've been progressively getting better under Thibodeau as the head coach, which is not even remotely disputable.
I mean, usually I'm not stunned, but like when certain moves happen on the NBA coaching carousel or NBA free agency happens, this one I was completely stunned that it happened. And usually, like, forget that I'm a Net fan for a second, but like when I looked at this and I said, all right, they lost due to some fundamental balances. That's what I would call it in this series. And that they didn't finish certain games when they had the lead. I don't look at it as that they weren't composed or they were too small for the moment. I don't look at it that way. I think they had their opportunities. Unfortunately, which was the game, because I always forget, the one that Naismith hit the 7 threes.
That was the first game.
Okay, so if the Knicks win one of those first two games, this is moot, and we're not even talking about it.
Yeah.
Or it goes 7 games the way it was going. And then if you play, and I'll tell you right now, if this wins 7 games, we're not even talking about Tibbs being fired, because game 7 is a complete crapshoot, and you have no idea what is going to happen. So, but it was funny. Like, I forgot what game we were doing on Playback, whatever stream it was, and Knicks fans on Twitter were going nuts, saying to fire Tibbs
at halftime. And it was the game that the
halftime.
Knicks ended up winning. And they were blaming Leon Rose and they were blaming Thibodeau. And
he was trending, by the way, Leon Rose.
I mean, by the way, like, I don't know what it is with this trend of firing head coaches. I mean, the only reason I'm more stunned at this move than I am with, say, the Mike Malone move is that those other moves, or Budenholzer, those moves seem to be very, like, player driven.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to me like the players don't like Thibodeau. That doesn't seem to be I mean, look, I don't have any inside information. I don't know, but that doesn't seem to be the case with this Knicks team.
Well, did you see Brunson got interviewed? I think it was after the series was over. And first of all, I hate when the media does this, by the way, right after a series ends. And these players are emotional after a long series. And they say, well, hey, Jalen, what are your thoughts on Tom Thibodeau and whether he should come back? And I'm not surprised at the way it's like, hey, guys, we just finished the series.
Yeah.
Like, how do you expect me to react right now after we just played a hard-fought 6-game series that, in layman's terms, they could have possibly won?
Well, you know, if games 1 and 2 go a little bit different, we could be having a totally different conversation. And you know what? It's not Thibodeau's look, it's not Thibodeau's fault that Aaron Naismith hit like 7 threes in a row.
It's also not his fault that the shot luckily went in from Halliburton.
Right. Like there's nothing like that was just so like, what were the odds of that happening anyway? And to me, it's like, and I've said this many times, for Knick fans who get frustrated with Thibodeau, and this is just one thing that I've come to learn from years of watching sports, which is that the coaches and the managers that you get frustrated with are usually the best ones, because they're the ones who get into the best or the ones getting your team into big spots. I was frustrated with Terry Collins a lot. I was frustrated. Like, I really was not a Terry Collins fan. I was often frustrated with Sandy Alderson as a GM. Look, Terry Collins made a lot of really dumb decisions in the World Series. He made a few, namely letting Matt Harvey continue to pitch.
That was bad. I remember that too.
Which was a really stupid move. However, I don't remember anybody calling on the Mets to fire Terry Collins because of that. Because you know what? It turns out that you're not going to get frustrated with Derek Fisher because you're winning 17 games with Derek Fisher.
Well,
and everybody it's just so ridiculous. And second of all, I mean, I saw Nick Wright talking about this, and I thought he made a good point.
I would be careful with him, by the way, with certain things he says.
Right. I agree. But I think in this case, he made a good point, which was it seems like the Knicks made their decision beforehand.
You know what? That one I actually agree with a little bit.
Because, like, it seems like they kind of made up their minds that they wanted to fire Thibodeau and just chalked up the Knicks beating the Celtics to a fluke, which to me, I think is completely unfair. I think it's completely unfair to blame Thibodeau for everything that goes wrong and not give him any credit for things that go right.
Well, the one thing I would say is, and I think this is the one knock against Thibodeau for any team, his coach, whether it was the Bulls or the Timberwolves, both teams, which, by the way, I think with the Timberwolves, he had the GM power on top of being the coach.
Yeah.
But the knock on him is that what does he do? He plays 7 guys. That's a big knock on him. If you look at the difference in the series, the Pacers were going, 11, 12 deep on their roster at some point? It took the Knicks how many games to go 10 deep? Like the 4th or 5th game? Maybe?
Well, they went deep in no. It was way earlier than that. It was more like the 3rd game because Brunson and Cat were getting into foul trouble.
That's another thing we're not talking about either.
Well, that's the thing, though. Like, first of all, people are making it sound like the problem with the way Knick fans were reacting to this, and I don't know how much this is fan-driven, it's just from the sheer pressure, because that seems like it too, but people are making it sound like this was a championship or bust season for the Knicks, which nobody would have ever said even 2 weeks ago. Like we're just changing. As the podcast name,
we're moving the goalposts.
Like,
that's good.
Like, okay, like nobody would have said that just 2 weeks ago, but we just have this weird sort of like short-term memory, which is that look, the team has improved under Thibodeau. It's not even disputable. The team has improved. They're a better team than they were last year. And last year, they were a better team than they were the year before. They've been winning more games, and they've made it further in the playoffs. So, like,
consecutive 50-win-plus teams.
And to me, it's just like whatever frustration. Like, I'm not saying Thibodeau's a perfect coach or couldn't do anything different.
He's defensive-minded, too.
And so perhaps he could do something different. He's a defensive-minded head coach whose best 2 players are liabilities on defense.
That's a fact.
And Tom Thibodeau has never won a championship. He's also never had a championship roster.
That's true. I agree, 100%.
He's never had a championship roster. He's never had a championship player or a guy who can lead you to a champ. Who's the best player he's had? Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, I would say Jimmy Butler.
So he's never had a championship roster. And by the way, for everybody who talks about he doesn't play the bench enough, to me, this is the most laughable criticism of Thibodeau.
It's the playoffs, for crying out loud. Are you really playing your 12th and 13th guy all the time?
You also have to remember, it's like, to me, it's like, I think it's really easy. Here's my analogy. I think it's really easy to glorify times that you never lived in.
No, I agree with that.
Like, I think it's easy to say living in the 70s and 80s was so amazing if you've never lived in the 70s and 80s. Like, it would be easy for either of us to say that. So it's the same thing to me with players. It's easy to say they're not playing the bench enough. Thibodeau, he doesn't play the bench enough when you never see them play.
Well,
has it ever occurred to you there's a reason he doesn't play the bench a lot?
Well, the one thing I would say is it does hurt in the stretch run of a series when you don't play like your 10th, 11th, 12th guy because they don't have the minutes or they're not out there enough to play. If you look at the Pacers roster, they knew it. The 10th, 11th, 12th guy was coming off the bench at some point in this series. And I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. Mathurin was the guy that really... Mathurin, excuse me. That was one of the best players in the series, and he was a bench player.
Okay, but here's what I'll say about that. The Knicks don't have a deep team.
I agree.
The Knicks have no depth. There are literally 7 guys on that roster that are worthy of playing more than 20 minutes. But to me, like everybody's talking about like Thibodeau, like he doesn't play the bench enough. So your argument is that the problem with Thibodeau is that he doesn't play Landry Shamet enough. He doesn't play Cameron Payne enough.
Well, Cameron
These
Payne
are
shouldn't
the
even be on
DeLon
this
Wright numbers.
roster.
I saw DeLon Wright. First of all, I saw DeLon Wright go into the game in, I think it was game 4.
He played well in this series, by the way.
Against Indiana. He got called for a double dribble. And it's like,
I remember seeing it.
I'm looking at this. I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe this is why Thibodeau doesn't play the bench, because the bench fucking sucks.
Now, I could poke a small hole in that argument, and it's going back to the Celtics and Heat run when they had the big threes on the roster. But again, that's a different style of basketball that can't be afforded now because of all the luxury tax issues and all that stuff. But you're talking about where teams focused on 5 to 7 players-ish on the roster. The Celtics, well, the Heat, the Heat really did it more than the Celtics, because what did they do? They overpaid LeBron, they overpaid Bosh, and they overpaid Wade, and they couldn't fill out the rest of the roster. So you saw them going and getting Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis and PJ Brown and all these guys that were veteran minimums. If you think about that, but the only difference was those were all veteran guys willing to accept a role on the bench to help fill out that roster. That's not the Knicks. The Knicks, if you look at their bench, they're young guys that have no experience.
Yeah, that's the problem. And you know what? That's not Tom Thibodeau's fault. He's not the GM. That's Leon Rose's fault if you want to blame anybody for that.
Well, I would blame James Dolan also for not willing to spend the money either.
Maybe. I mean, look, I don't know how much James Dolan... Look, the Knicks have gotten a lot better when James Dolan stepped away and did less.
He cares more about the Rangers than the Knicks, that's for sure.
Well, he did the same thing with the Rangers, which is that he stepped away from the Rangers way sooner than he stepped away from the Knicks.
No, but I'm saying I think he's more willing to write the checks for the Rangers than he is for the Knicks.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of a leash he puts Leon Rose on, but it certainly is not Thibodeau it's not really. It certainly is not Thibodeau's fault that the roster is not deep. Like that's not on him.
By the way, that's the second non-traditional GM that James Dolan hired, having Phil Jackson be your GM way back when.
The Phil Jackson move was terrible, and I actually called it at the time that the Phil Jackson move was terrible. He was so obsessed with running the triangle offense with Derek Fisher, and that roster was that team was a disaster. But
he also wasn't in New York half the time.
Yeah, and I said it was going to be a disaster. Leon Rose, though, has done a good job, and I like what Leon Rose has done. Leon Rose built this team. The Knicks should not be where they are now without Leon Rose. That's not even disputable. I mean, we have to remember where the Knicks came from with Leon Rose. And also, blaming this all on Thibodeau for, his rotations being bad, I don't think Thibodeau has that much to work with when it comes to depth. It's just the Knicks have a good starting 5. The problem with the Knicks is that when their starting 5 are not playing well, and 3 of their starting 5 notably did not play well, not to mention Brunson getting into constant foul trouble, they're always running. What are they going to do? The thing is that look, I will say Josh Hart is the most overrated player on the team. Josh Hart is so unbelievably overrated. He's playing shooting guard, and he is the skill set for a 6'10" power forward.
I don't know if that's 100% fair, though.
From the way he played, I mean, first of all, he's erratic with the ball in his hands. I have a heart attack every time he dribbles the ball up because he has no awareness. Somebody's always sneaking up on him.
Okay, but he's not supposed to be the point guard, though.
You're fair enough. But when he has the ball in his hands, and shooting guards have the ball in their hands a lot, he's erratic. He's not a good 3-point shooter. He's one of the worst passers. He's one of the worst passers I've seen for a guard. His passes are all over the place. He turns the ball over. He's always turning the ball over.
He was never meant to be a starter, though.
But he was a starter on this team.
No. Okay. That was going to be the point I was going to make. On this team, he's a starter. On most bigger teams, he'd probably be a second unit.
Yeah. However, I will say this about Thibodeau. He did get a lot out of Josh Hart. Josh Hart was probably developed into a much better player on the Knicks than he did on his previous teams.
I mean, this is going to sound harsh, but he's the best rebounder on this team.
Yeah, he is. I don't doubt that. But That's the only thing and he's a good rebounder and he's a good defender. But I think that he turns the ball over too much. He is not a good shooter. He's not a good foul shooter, or at least could be much better. And he's so erratic. Now, I'd be willing to trade Hart for a good deal. I'd be willing to do that. The other is Bridges. Bridges was terrible in this series. Bridges couldn't hit water if he fell off a boat. That's how, like, he's been such an inefficient shooter for the Knicks. And look, when 3 of your 5 guys, and Towns obviously did not have a good series.
He played like crap.
Constantly get it outside of game 3 when he scored 20 points in 1 quarter. And I'm not trying to blame all of this on Towns, but and Towns had a good season. He did. He was all NBA. He was 3rd team all NBA this year. So you can't say he's had a bad season, but he did not have a good series. And when Bridges, Hart, and Towns all don't have good series, and not to mention Brunson getting into constant foul trouble, constantly playing with 5 fouls, how do you blame that all on the head coach? Like, to me, that's just so ridiculous.
Well,
and sure, and Towns, the problem is our 2 best players are not good. They're not just not good defensive players, they're bad defensive players to the point where it becomes a liability. And you know what? The Knicks roster is not as deep as Indiana's roster. It's really just that simple. Like, look, after Miles McBride, there is a huge drop-off in that roster. Who's the best guy after McBride or Robinson? It's like Landry Shamet, Cameron Payne.
Cameron Payne should not even be playing in the NBA anymore.
It's
to be quite honest.
I just think it's so ridiculous when people are like, he doesn't play the bench enough. It's like, oh yeah, the problem is Landry Shamet, Cameron Payne, DeLon Wright, Tyler Kolek, they're just not getting enough playing time. That's the problem.
I'm going to make another reference because I know you love when I make these obscure references from time to time, but I would say Jalen Rose. Oh my God. Jalen Brunson. I have too many Knicks on my mind. Jalen Brunson is James Harden.
No.
The reason I say it is because they're both offensively minded, but they don't play defense.
Okay, a little bit. And they both, okay, I think that there are some similarities. The problem with what you're saying, comparing him to Harden, is that Brunson is about 8 years younger than Harden.
No, I get that. I'm talking about just from their games. Their games are very similar.
I agree. I actually see that a lot. I think their games are fairly similar. The only thing is I don't think Brunson has the reputation that Harden does. I also think that Brunson is much less of a diva than Harden has become.
That I agree with. I think that Jalen Brunson is a little more reasonable when it comes to situations, but I see the future looking at James Harden the way Jalen Brunson is now, where it's very pull up and shoot or turn around and shoot, which if you look at James Harden, it's the same thing.
I will say, though, I think Brunson's probably a better playoff performer than Harden. Harden has really disappeared in the playoffs quite a lot.
That I agree with.
I mean, the thing is, I see what you're saying, but to that, I would say the future is not predetermined. And just because it worked out for Harden the way it did doesn't mean it had to.
Well, he hasn't won anything. I mean, Jalen Brunson can still win a title at some point.
He hasn't won anything, but the point is, it's not like that had to happen. Like, he could have won something.
Does Harden have an MVP?
Yes.
So
probably should have 2 MVPs.
Yeah, because he's a really good scorer, but plays no defense.
No,
I will say Brunson.
I will say,
yeah, that's true. And I would say that Brunson will chase guys around. Harden won't chase anybody around. You could put a stake on the back of somebody and he wouldn't chase them around.
Yeah, Harden has always been a liability on defense. I mean, look, I see the similarities, but to that I would say it's just like Harden is a really, really good player. And there's no reason why, just because it happened to work out that he didn't win a championship doesn't mean that it had to be that way. Like, if he was on the right roster, I mean, you couldn't win with Harden as your best player, but if he was on the right roster, he certainly could have won a championship. By the way, if not for the inmates running the asylum over in Brooklyn, they could have won multiple championships, that team. It's not like the team wasn't good. They just hardly played together.
Well, and there was a lot of ego on that team. But
yeah, there was a whole lot of ego involved.
I'll give you one more reference since we're talking about New York and Brooklyn. I could see Jalen Brunson being Carmelo Anthony down the line in the future, where he's a really good player. He did what he had to do, which was be the offensive leader for the Knicks, but the Knicks were never good enough to win a title. They would get to the playoffs from time to time, they would win a round, but they just did not have enough firepower to get to an NBA Finals. I could see the same thing.
It's possible, but I think it's unlikely because he's gone further than Carmelo in the playoffs. And there's also been Carmelo Anthony Knicks teams that were really bad. I mean, don't forget, remember the 17-win Knicks team in 10 years ago? That was a Carmelo team.
As scary as that is, yes.
So,
but
I mean,
my point is,
Carmelo's been on some really bad Knicks teams. You can't really say the same thing about Brunson.
well, I guess more of my point is that Carmelo never got over the hump, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I could see Jalen Brunson being the same way because I don't know if this ownership will do enough to give Jalen Brunson the pieces he needs to win.
Yeah. And right now, the best opportunity would be Giannis. He'd be the best opportunity to go out and get. And like I said, on leftovers that I'd be willing to move on from Cat.
I think you should.
Honest, I'd be willing to move on from anybody potentially if we get a good enough deal to get Giannis. Now, I don't think we should move on from Cat to get Durant.
I agree with that.
I don't think I want to do that. Durant is a shell of what is Durant even a top 20 player anymore? Like,
I would say yes, just from a scoring standpoint, but for everything else, I would say no. Because I don't know if he can rebound because of his legs. He can't stay healthy. He can't really run the court. He needs a team that's not a running gunner, which he used to be. He can't do that anymore. When he came up with OKC, that was a run and gun team with Harden and Westbrook and all the guys, and they could run and he could pull up on a jumper. He can't do that anymore. The Suns played a full half-court set. If you remember when D'Antoni was the head coach of the Suns, what was the mantra? Shoot in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock.
Yeah.
They had to destroy that theory because he can't run.
Yeah, he can't move like he used to. He doesn't stay healthy. And right now, like this year, Towns had a better year than Durant did. But
that's not surprising. Everyone had a better year than Durant.
So to me, like going out and like trading, like making this huge trade with like it would probably have to be like, Cat and like Bridges and a whole bunch of picks or whatever to get Durant. It's like that's just not going to be worth it. Giannis is still one of the 5 best players in basketball right now. So part of the reason I said I'd be open to moving on from Cat is not because I don't think Cat had a good year. He did have a good year, and trading for him was absolutely the right move. However, there's a problem when your 2 best players on the team are liabilities on defense, so they don't mix together very well. And second of all, it's to get Giannis, who is obviously a much better player than Cat is. So in that sense, that's the reason I said that I'd be in favor potentially of moving on from Cat, because like just under the circumstances, we could be so much better if we use him in a trade as currency, essentially. That was my point.
I would just say also that there's only one guy that's not tradable on this roster, and it's Jalen Brunson. Yeah. Everybody else is fair game. You want to make a trade for anybody else and you get the right pieces back, whether that's a Giannis deal, which, by the way, I think we talked about this, but the salaries almost match up between Towns and Giannis. So almost. They're pretty similar, because I think Towns is going to be making close to 60 next year.
And how about Giannis?
I think very close to that as well.
So that's not such a bad. That doesn't sound so bad. I don't know if the Knicks are Giannis's preferred destination.
Well, did you see that weird tweet about like wanting to be in New York or?
Well, no. Somebody asked, "Where's your favorite place to play on the road?" And he said
MSG. Yeah.
However, that's playing on the road. That means he likes being in the city on the road. It doesn't mean he likes living in the city. I would like to go to the Bahamas on vacation. I don't want to live there.
Well, that's a good point.
So to me, that's a little different. There was actually a guy who called into WFAN, into Evan and Tiki, and said that I think he ran into Giannis on vacation or something like that.
What?
And he said, and he asked him about going to the Knicks, and Giannis said to him, "Well, I don't really like the tax situation
Well,
in
that's
New York,"
true.
which obviously is true. I don't know if there's any state tax in Milwaukee. I think there probably is, but I'm
There
sure
is.
it's not as high as it is in New York.
But wait a minute. If he doesn't like the state tax, then don't go to California either.
Right, but he's not playing in California.
No, I'm saying like if that's one of the issues, then don't go to California and play for the Lakers or the Clippers.
Right. No, absolutely. But I don't know if he wants to go to New York or not. Like I just don't know. But I think that would be a huge difference. That would make a huge difference. If moving on from Cat means we can get Giannis, I'd potentially be in favor of it.
If you can make it work and you don't deplete your whole roster, then yeah, you try to figure it out. But you're not trading Brunson. That's off the table. You got to keep Brunson, and I think Giannis would be a good complementary piece for Brunson.
Yeah. Well, the problem is we used up a lot of picks on Bridges and Towns. So
can we laugh about that for a second too? The whole Bridges thing, because people say, "Oh my God, it was a terrible trade. We gave away 5 second round." Guys, 5 second round picks is worth what? Zero.
It's worth it for a team like the Nets, which is in a rebuilding mode and one of the worst teams in the league. So no, I agree completely. Second of all, it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it, even though I was dissatisfied with Bridges a lot this year.
He had two of the biggest games in the Celtics series.
Yeah, if not for Bridges, we're not in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I mean, that steal that we saw at the end of that game, and then the other defensive possession that he had. Yeah. Like, if it was not for him, that series is still going on.
Bridges is a very underrated on-ball defender. He's a very good on-ball defender.
He's a streaky shooter, though.
He's a very streaky shooter, although in the Celtics series, he hit the shots when it mattered the most. He hit clutch shots. Now, to be fair, part of the reason they were clutch shots is because he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn earlier in that game.
The corner threes. Oh, my God. Like, stop shooting threes. You can't make them.
So I don't disagree with that. But also, it's just like, but with Thibodeau, like, look, if Bridges can't hit open shots, if Hart is constantly turning the ball over, like if Towns and Brunson are constantly getting into foul trouble, like that's not really Thibodeau's fault. Like there's nothing he can do about that. There's nothing you can do about Bridges missing a bunch of shots. There's nothing you can do about that.
Okay. But I'm going to point out something that you already know the answer to, which is when a team stinks or they have a bad moment, they lose a series, who's always the casualty?
It's always the coach. But it's always the coach.
Because the player gets paid millions. You're not going to get rid of him.
No. But I also want to look at it more rationally and say, okay, there are certain things that have nothing to do with the head coach. There's nothing the head coach can do about guys missing open shots. Like that just, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing Thibodeau could do about Aaron Nesmith hitting 7 straight threes. That's not Thibodeau's fault.
That's just hot, streaky shooting.
That's just a hot streak. Like, and to me, stop making it sound like the Knicks underachieved. They objectively overachieved. Objectively, they overachieved.
Here's what bothers me, and I forgot to bring this up before, which is I think the Knicks fans jumped on a moment a little too soon, like they won the NBA title when they started climbing the billboards in the city. Like, and now what that caused Knicks fans to do was to expect more than they should have gotten.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it went from a really high to a really low. And to me, I don't think that anybody who actually knows basketball thought the Knicks were that much better of a team than the Pacers.
And the funny part is there were people out there saying, the Knicks are going to win this series. It's like they're the better team. And I laughed because they're not the better team.
No, I never thought they were the better team than Indiana.
Halliburton had a chip on his shoulder going all the way back to the Olympics because Kerr didn't play him. I mean...
Oh, no, I think it was more because he was voted most overrated.
Which is such a ridiculous statement when you look at it.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And it's like, you know what? Like, Indiana, like the thing is that people have to remember Indiana was like a buzzsaw. Look at what they did to Milwaukee. Look at what they did to Cleveland. Cleveland was the #1 team in the East, and look at what Indiana did to Cleveland.
Second
And it's
best
like,
record behind OKC. Yeah.
yeah, they have the second best record in basketball. So for me, it's just like, okay, they lost to a really, really good team. They lost to a more talented team. They lost to a better team. They're not a more talented team at the top, but overall they're a more talented team. And that's really all it was. That the Knicks are not good. They're not the best. They're not a good team defensively, and it's not because of Thibodeau that they're not a good team defensively. It's because their two best players that you have to have on the floor at the same time are bad defenders.
I mean, on top of it, can someone tell Cat to stop aggressively driving offensive fouls? I mean, the guy is like an offensive foul magnet. And then
in this series, he certainly was.
And then on top of it, I forgot who was saying it in the series on the commentary, but how many times Karl Anthony Towns laid back on the Halliburton floater, one-handed floater, making it easier for him to make the shot. Go out and put a hand up on him so he doesn't shoot.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And where's all the blame there? Like, and also just like maybe go out and make some changes, but for everybody going out and saying, "Oh, the Knicks have to blow everything up," they have to blow everything up, and they have to make major changes. It is such an overreaction to what was objectively a successful season for what we relative to expectations.
I mean,
I'm about
to have a Stephen A moment, but that's blasphemous.
But it really is.
Seriously,
to me, it's just so irrational. And to me, it's like I've said this many times. Every head coach that hasn't won a championship has some type of fatal flaw that they develop or that they have a reputation for. Andy Reid was a bad clock manager until he got Mahomes.
Or what about Coughlin? Coughlin had a knock on him until he won a title. Didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and you know what? I'd say like every head coach gets that weird fatal flaw. It's the same thing in college football. Like James Franklin can't win the big game and things like that. And it's like and now Andy Reid is some people would say is the best head coach in the history of the NFL,
which is crazy.
Which you can make an argument for, though, plausibly. And maybe it turns out that the public's perception was just wrong. Kind of wrong, a little off base.
The last thing I'll say, because we want to get to a couple other things. The question I want to put in people's minds, because it's too early to really be thinking about who's the next in line for the head coaching position.
Is it, though?
I think it's a little soon. But are we really... Here's the question, because you were saying, they overreacted, which they did by firing Tibbs. Does that mean that Michael Malone is your guy? Is that the guy you're going after right now?
Or Budenholzer?
You're going to go after Budenholzer.
No. I mean, look at the roster. Look, the Suns had the Suns had Durant and Devin Booker, and the Suns just missed the playoffs. I mean, can you really argue that Budenholzer got the most out of his players?
Yes and no. I think he could have done better, but at the same time, when you have a lazy Kevin Durant and a Devin Booker who's dating 5 million Kardashians off the court, I mean, you don't know what to really expect from those guys anymore. Apparently, the report is Devin Booker is in line helping with the coaching search.
Well, here's the thing. To me, going after Budenholzer would be or even Malone is just looking for the next shiny object.
Right, but I don't think Budenholzer is better than Tibbs. I'll just say that now.
I don't think any of those guys are better or clearly better than Tibbs. And I mean, I'm not saying it's a given that Tibbs is necessarily so much better than them, but if I'm on the fence, about a head coach, even if I'm on the fence about a head coach, and they've improved under that head coach season to season, I'd rather err on the side of not firing him.
Can I give you a wild name, though? Or not really a wild name, but a name that I think would shock people. They should go get Jeff Van Gundy.
Van Gundy.
He wants to coach again. He's on the
When's
Clippers.
The last time he coached?
He's with the Clippers. He's an assistant coach.
No, I mean, when's the last time he was a head coach?
Oh, God. It'd have to be the Knicks, probably. Oh, no. It was the Rockets. I think he was the Rockets head coach. But that was a while ago. But
I mean, I don't know. Are you going to fire Thibodeau, who's been getting progressively better for a head coach that hasn't coached in how many years?
I'm trying to figure that out. Well, he was the last finals appearance for the Knicks, by the way.
So the last time he was the head coach was Houston in 2007.
But he keeps saying he wants a head coaching job.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, what is he, like the John Gruden of the NBA?
But the thing is, Van Gundy's got New York experience. He knows how to handle that media. He knows how to handle that situation. I think going to some experience would not be such a bad thing.
I mean, look, at this point, I'm open to it. I'm open to them hiring. I'm open to it. I'm just not convinced Van Gundy is likely a better head coach than Thibodeau. I think it seems unlikely.
Again, not disagreeing, but unfortunately, at this point, this is what the Knicks decided, and you need a new head coach.
That's a totally fair point. But ultimately, what they should have done was just made some roster changes.
Well, go out and try and get Giannis, make the deal.
Yeah, like I said, go get Giannis, or maybe get us a little deeper of a bench. Like complaining about Thibodeau, like we've talked about ad nauseum, but like I just thought so much of the criticism of Thibodeau not playing his bench has just been so overstated.
One guy or two guys, and you're not going to get them because they're on current rosters like the Celtics and the Pacers. The Knicks don't have a TJ McConnell or a Pritchard. They don't have a guy like that
right
on their roster where TJ McConnell single-handedly saved some of these games by himself. Yeah. By the way, being able to go in, infuse some energy into the second unit and really keep them alive. Otherwise, I think the Knicks could have won that series on energy alone if it wasn't for McConnell. But they need a guy like McConnell or Pritchard, like on the Celtics. If they can find someone like that who's like a big energy guy, that would help that second unit.
The closest thing we have to that is somebody like McBride.
And I like McBride too.
He's the only one, though.
I'm just saying, he's good. I think he showed some spells of greatness from time to time, but it's not enough.
But if the Knicks, another reason, by the way, I don't want the Knicks to go out and get Durant is because in order to move on from Towns for Durant, which, by the way, Towns was better this past season than Durant was.
You're losing on that instantly if you make that deal.
It's a losing deal. Like, there's no way it's not going to be a losing deal.
And he's going to be a headache in New York.
Yeah. Also, though, you also have to consider that, like, okay, you're moving on from Towns. You have to have a lot of faith in Mitchell Robinson as your starting center. And Mitchell Robinson can only give you like 20 minutes a game.
Even if you built him up to play more minutes, his foul shooting is going to become a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not going to become a 75% foul shooter overnight. It's not going to happen.
I mean, if you could, in theory, if they could get him from, 37% in the playoffs? I don't know what it is during the regular season.
He's actually good in the series against Indiana.
Which was shocking. But if they could get him to be like 50% from the free throw line, then at least it's a little more plausible if he's hitting 1 out of every 2, at least, and you're not losing from the free throw line.
He's above 50% this season.
Oh, is he?
He's like 57%. So he's above that.
All right. If they could get him to like 65, 70%.
But that's part of it. But I don't really, I think you're over-focused on the foul shooting because that's not really the reason. It's more, that's part of it, but that's not.
But that's going to keep him off the court for certain parts of the game.
Right. But the biggest problem with Robinson is not the foul shooting, is that he can only give you 20 minutes consistently.
Well, I'm saying even if they built him up stamina-wise, it's still going to be a problem.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It certainly would be a problem. And so I don't have that much faith in it, but going out and getting Giannis ultimately is what I think they should try and do.
That's fair.
Moving the goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. I do want to move on to the NBA Finals a little bit, which the Knicks are not going to be in. Oklahoma City is playing Indiana.
The OKC Thunder are a massive, massive, massive favorite. And if I was reading the statistics correctly, this was a record for one of the highest favorites in a NBA Finals series.
I mean, this Oklahoma City team is one of the best teams I've ever seen. Like they really are one of the best teams I've ever, this year's team. Like, I was so wrong. I mean, they are just a buzzsaw. They just destroyed Minnesota. And by the way, I think Minnesota would have beaten the Knicks if they had played.
Probably.
And it's not like Minnesota wasn't a good team. I mean, Oklahoma City, they're killing everybody.
Yes.
And this is such a good this roster is so good. It's one of the best, probably the best defensive team in the NBA this year.
Well, they were second or third defensively. I know that for a fact. Offensively, you have the MVP on your roster, which helps. And there's another argument I want to spell also, because people are frustrating me with it, is no one's going to watch the series because it's too small markets. Guys, the Pacers are not 100% small market by any means anymore. They used to be, but they're not.
Well, I would categorize both these teams as small market, although I don't think it's as bad. I think people just overreact to it because, like, look at Alabama football. Huge TV ratings, and that's a small market. You look at a team like the St. Louis Cardinals, I would say that's also a small market. But, you know, they're a very popular team. So I don't really think it's – but the flip side of it is also that neither of these teams have won before. You got to look at it that way, too.
No, and that's what I like about this series, that we're actually going to have a first-time champion. We're not going to get a repeat champion for the first time in, 7-8 years? I mean, so...
And by the way, like, I don't know why people are so obsessed with, like, why fans are so obsessed with what the TV ratings for the NBA are going to be.
Who gives a shit? I mean...
That's their problem.
Just watch the damn series. If you're a basketball fan,
you're talking point. Like...
Right. That's kind of the stupid Jordan versus LeBron debate. Like, it's the same thing. Like, oh, well, LeBron scored more points, but Michael Jordan had more titles. Like, it's a semantics debate is the point I'm getting at.
Yeah, but like, okay, so the NBA TV ratings are not going to be as good. What do you want Adam Silver to do about that? Like, I don't know.
Unless he's going to cheat everybody and just put the Knicks and the Lakers in every year. I mean...
And by the way, if the Knicks and Lakers... By the way, the same people saying that, if the Knicks and Lakers made it to the finals, would be like, well, of course, this is rigged. The NBA wanted
Exactly.
This.
Yes.
So, you know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But to me, neither... I mean, Oklahoma City is... I mean, look how young of a team they have, how young their starting five is. Imagine if a starting five that young ends up winning a title. That's history. And by the way, the opportunity, I mean, talent-wise, Oklahoma City is so much better than Indiana or the Knicks. I think if they played the Knicks, they'd probably sweep the Knicks.
I think the Pacers have a better chance than the Knicks ever would have, because at least they go deeper in the roster.
Yeah.
But OKC has more
roster.
Shooters.
OKC has more shooters. Roster. That's the thing. But also, this team is so young. The starting five, 2 guys on their starting five are still on their rookie deals.
That's crazy.
So now they don't have a very big window to win a championship, because they're going to have to pay J-Dub and they're going to have to pay Chet Holmgren. So in a couple of years, they're going to run into this problem where they're not going to be able to play. They're not going to be able to pay all the guys on their roster, just like Indiana's going to run into that problem.
Well, unless it becomes a Golden State Warriors situation in OKC, where if they win the titles, the owners are willing to pay the cap penalty to keep the team together.
Right. Although the CBA is different now.
No. But I'm just saying, like, the Warriors just literally just paid over the salary tax amount, knowing that if they kept Draymond and Clay and Steph all together, that they were going to win a bunch of titles, which they did. They were way over the cap every single year.
I could be wrong. I don't think the Warriors would be able to do now what they did then.
if you're willing to pay over the cap, it's just a penalty. That's it.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. Although I think it was a little bit of a difference with.
You're talking about the double apron system, which they have now with the percentage of money. That was not around back when they were paying off the money. But as long as you're willing to pay, because it goes from like 3% all the way up to 25% in penalties. If you're willing to pay the money, that's on you. If you're willing to pay it.
But I think it'll be very hard to do.
I agree, but I think this roster,
yeah, you're right. It's possible.
Currently, from OKC is a really good roster. They got to keep Shy. Chet Holmgren is finally coming around after being a walk-in injury for many years.
By the way, he's the frailest NBA player I've ever seen,
and a big man too. Like,
yeah,
he reminds me a little bit of oh god, why am I forgetting his name now? The former Knicks big man who we make fun of all the time, who's on the Celtics now.
Porzingis?
Yes, he reminds me of Porzingis a little bit.
A little bit. I see that a little bit.
Because it's like, okay, you're a big man, you're a great shooter, but then you can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I see that a little bit. I see that a little bit too. But look, this Oklahoma City roster is just so good. I think they're going to be a buzzsaw. And I think they beat Indy. I like Oklahoma City in 5.
Yeah, I think the Pacers will put up fights in those games, but I think OKC is gonna run away with the games by the end.
By the way, speaking of it, we didn't get to this, but was there anything in the world more absurd than Reggie Miller, who's broadcasting the game?
I know what you're going to say.
I don't have an issue with Reggie Miller broadcasting the game.
I do.
But Reggie Miller wearing all black to Game 6, like all the Pacers players. Is that not the most absurd thing?
It was
for
bad.
A national broadcaster to just be openly rooting against one of the teams?
I have a problem.
Crazy.
I have a problem that he was a Pacers. He was a career Pacer. That's what he was.
But I'm fine. Like, to me, I don't have an issue with him being a career Pacer or having a bias toward the Pacers. My issue is when you're broadcasting the game, just leave the bias at home.
Yes.
That's
I agree.
The professional thing to do as a broadcaster.
But that's the
going
problem.
Into the stadium wearing all black because it's the Knicks funeral. That is just embarrassing.
That's the difference. And you and I know this. Most people won't. That's the difference between a local broadcaster and a national broadcaster.
There's nothing wrong with a local broadcaster doing that. A national broadcaster cannot be doing that.
Because what is absurd? Because a local broadcaster's job is to what? Bring the fans in from that area of the country in to watch their team. That's different.
I mean, by the way, local broadcasters are not even usually that biased compared to what Reggie Miller was doing.
No, I agree.
I've never even seen that from a local broadcasters. That's how absurd it is.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying, like, that sounded like Reggie was on a Pacers broadcast, not a national broadcast.
Yeah, exactly. Like that is just so just ridiculously absurd. And I'm not one who says national broadcasters all hate our team, but it's similar to when when the Dodgers beat the Mets in the NLCS and ESPN posted that picture of the Dodgers with the OMG chain. I'm just like, this is coming from ESPN? Are you kidding me?
I had a different issue with that the Fox broadcaster, I forgot his name now. He's the number 2 guy, I think, for NFL on Fox. He's the Dodgers broadcaster.
Like, yeah, I mean, look, I don't even have an issue with that as long as you're like, I don't think it has to be that like you can't have like a Dodgers broadcaster doing the game, as long as you know how to be unbiased in that broadcast.
It felt a little biased. A little bit.
He probably was. But either way, like I'm so anyway, I do want to talk about this Stefon Diggs boat video. Let me just preface this by saying NFL players and boats don't mix.
That's true.
NFL players being spotted on boats never leads to anything good.
Well, usually it leads to some like sexual issues too, like on a boat.
Well, Odell Beckham. Well, the famous one is the Giants boat video.
Well, oh no, I was going all the way back to the Vikings. Do you remember the Vikings with Dante Culpepper and?
Oh yeah, that one.
that got them in trouble. They almost got legal issues out of that.
Yeah, and And but like I was also thinking of the Giants boat picture.
Oh,
Right
where they just took the picture. I think that was in Miami, right?
Yeah, and it was right before the they lost. They got killed by the Packers.
They got embarrassed by the Packers, if I'm not mistaken. But
And it was all the Giants wide receivers that were on that boat.
you can't make it up.
And they had some questionable substances, which in this case, also questionable substances. Stefon Diggs, first of all, Stefon Diggs dating Cardi B is a big enough problem in and of itself.
Yes. I was just thinking the same thing.
He also had this pink substance. What is this? Pink cocaine? Pink lemonade flavored cocaine? Like, what is that?
I usually when someone says pink substance, that's not a good thing. Usually,
True.
when it's in a baggie of some sort. Let's see. The wide receiver. So one of the women said, "quote Mr. Make It Happen on a boat." The wide receiver corrects her, pulling out a silver packet containing a mysterious pink substance and hands it to one of the ladies. Okay, that's not good.
Well, I don't know what pink substance was it. Do we know?
Well, here's the other weird thing. So it says, although it's unclear what the pink powder is, Diggs warns the woman not to, quote, take it all.
That means it's probably a drug.
Well,
It's got to be a drug.
I don't know how real I really want to be. I'm probably not going to say it, but
Well, actually, maybe he meant don't take it all because you got to save it for some other people. So, like,
well, it says not to take it all and tells them to, quote, go have fun, but come back and see me soon. It makes me think it's a date, you know what, drug?
no.
That's what it makes me. Why
No,
would you?
because I feel like a date rape drug you would like sneak in or drink or something like that. Not something you just give to them.
Yeah, but why would you take a mysterious substance from a football player?
No, I don't think it was mysterious to them. They probably knew what it was. It's mysterious to us because we weren't there.
Well, it says Cardi B was on the boat, by the way, also.
I mean, I'm led to believe it was probably cocaine.
Probably. You're probably right. But still, it makes a better headline when you say mysterious pink substance instead of cocaine.
None of us really know what it is, but it's probably cocaine. Well, you also have to say that because you don't know what the substance actually was. I think it's probably cocaine.
The only one who's going to know is himself.
Yeah.
And maybe the people on the boat.
But I mean, I guess the only way this would be worse would be if this was during the season.
I think it's still bad because I think they're randomly tested all year, aren't they?
Are they tested for illegal drugs or just performance enhancing drugs?
Well, it doesn't really matter if cocaine's in your system. You get arrested. I mean, like,
right, but does the NFL test for it?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I don't think they do.
It just seems weird that you're taking random pink substances on a boat.
But where was this boat? Was it Miami?
I'm trying to figure that out. I think it's just a cruise ship. They don't say where or whatnot. But I see pictures of the boat.
I can't think of anything more like high class than having cocaine on a boat.
Apparently, though, Mike Vrabel basically called him out for basically talking about the viral moment also.
Yeah.
And he was asked, quote, it's something that we're aware of. The Patriots head coach told reporters before adding that Diggs was not present for the practice. Gee, I wonder why he wasn't available at the practice.
Yeah. He was all drugged up.
Like, should he get suspended for that? I don't know.
I don't know how that works.
Probably. The NFLPA is a monster. I don't know if I'd want to mess with that, but what do I know?
I don't know. Anyway, finally, I want to talk about this. Around the Horn comes to an end. Finally, Around the Horn is ending. My thought is this show has just run its course. That's really all it is. I think this type of format has run its course. I don't think it's that popular anymore. People freaking out about this. Here's what I'll say. TV shows generally are not meant to last forever. Seinfeld is one of the best sitcoms ever. It lasted 9 years. Friends is one of the best sitcoms ever. It lasted 10 years, and that was too long.
One of my favorite shows.
So to me, it's just like TV shows. Now, maybe it's different with sports shows, but they're not meant to last forever. SNL's been around for 50 years, but half the years it stunk. So it's just like TV is a fickle business, and types and shows just kind of run their course. And that's what this was. It ran its course.
Yeah, but here's the issue, which is the show's ratings were still at its sky highest, and it was still profitable. Those are two things you don't hear when a show signs off and goes off the air, that their ratings are at the top. And actually, it's one of the highest rating shows on ESPN still to this day. So why would you take one of the most highest rated shows off the air for no reason? And if the show's making money, why would you take it off the air?
Where are you hearing that it was still that the ratings were high?
Reality.
Oh, Ray Alley said that.
Yeah. So he's been on an interview tour lately when the show was going off the air. He was never a podcast guy or a radio guy. And he's been doing all these interviews, and he said, hey, our ratings are sky high. The money is profitable. And I was never given an answer for why the show was canceled.
Yeah, that's kind of mysterious.
And another thing I want to point out, 4,953 episodes. That is in 23 years of being on the air. That's more than Oprah. That's more than Letterman. It's more than Sesame Street. Okay? So it's a big deal for this type of show to go off air.
What is Tony Reality gonna do now?
So his contract, and here's the weird thing. So the show ended right around Memorial Day, right? That's where it approximately ended. His contract is until August. So they got to figure out if he's just going to sit on the sideline. They could put him on Sports Center, which I don't really think that's his personality or drive, to be quite honest. Is ESPN going to resign him? I don't know.
Well, he could do a podcast, right?
He's got a website and a YouTube channel already up from the last episode. They allowed him to promote it and everything during the show. So he's got the YouTube channel. I think this is a mistake. The best, you know what they called PTI and Around the Horn? The happy hour.
The happy, yeah. Well, PTI is still on.
Right, but I'm saying they said it was the happy hour because it was one of the best hours in sports between PTI and Around the Horn. And then, which would usually lead into either the 6 p.m. Sports Center or an NBA game that was highly rated. So the crazy part is, why would you mess with two shows that have been working for so long?
Well, they're not messing with PTI, are they?
No, but actually, the funny part is when ATH went off the air, they tried to propose making PTI an hour show
instead of a half hour,
which I think is a disaster. If you ask me, making that an hour show, I think it's perfect the way it is as a half an hour show.
No, I agree.
And they were trying to negotiate it, and basically the two guys said to go kick rocks because they didn't want to, because they weren't going to pay them more. They were just going to expand the spot. Why would you do that?
Yeah, obviously.
But Reality is one of the best as a host. He said he had conversations with NBC. And what was the other one he said? I think I heard he was talking to Spotify for The Ringer with Bill Simmons. Like, he'll be somewhere. He's not going to go untouched. At least I don't think so.
No, I think you're probably right.
So we'll see what happens. But ESPN does some fickle things where they remove shows way earlier than they're supposed to. And then they put on crappy shows that no one wants to watch or listen to whatsoever.
Yeah, that's also true. So, yeah, I don't know. Remember the show Numbers Never Lie?
Yeah, that was Jamel Hill and Michael Smith.
Yeah, and that turned into
His and Hers.
And that turned into Sports Center.
SC6.
SC6, or a certain brand of Sports Center.
Which was the worst Sports Center in the history of Sports Center. But that led them to doing a brand of SVP's Sports Center, which thankfully worked out.
Yes, this is all true. All right, so that's our show this week. I'll be back next week. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morgeson. And this is Moving the Goalposts. See you guys next week.